So now I'm going to try and explain many of the sketching techniques that I use with students which have become highly successful. There are many of these and they become a very natural thing to do, so I'll hopefully try to explain quite a number of them. I'm working on A3 plain paper and I'm going to be using a blue mechanical pencil, which gives me a nice sharp line always. I'm using blue leads with the mechanical pencil. Now the first thing you'll notice I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn my work. Okay, now I'm going to turn this at an angle. I am right-handed and I therefore tend to work best when I move my pencil from my left to my right across the page. That's the most natural, most comfortable position for me to be sat on a stool when sketching, and it allows me the most control. If I am dragging from the right to the left, I find that my line quality is not quite as good, and actually I find it a little bit more uncomfortable. So I would highly recommend, if you are right-handed, getting your pad, and if this is level now with my table, to turn your pad at an angle. This is if you wanted to draw a parallel line along the paper. So if I just demonstrate that for the moment, so you'll see that it allows me to do long lines across my page, pretty much parallel to the edge of my page here. You'll also notice what I'm trying to do, I'm holding the pencil low down, I'm holding the pencil here. This is why I like mechanical pencils, because they show you actually where you should grip a pencil. We're in the knurled section. So I'm holding it there, I'm holding it between two fingers and my thumb, and that allows me really good control and manipulation. It allows me to press harder and more delicately by changing the pressure between my fingers. Okay, so that gives me, as I've said, more control. One of the things that we're also after doing is doing like a fall off and a fall in or a fade in with our line. That is, if you imagine, I'm going to exaggerate this, that we do this kind of arced motion with the pencil. So as we move our hand, the line fades in and we lift off and the line fades out. So we get these longer lines that go light to dark and perhaps a little bit more expressive. Okay, it's a really good technique to use. Now, the only way to be able to use that kind of technique is if your hand and if your elbow are not placed onto the table. So one of the key things with sketching that we want to do is to be lifting your arm up in the air, holding your pencil perhaps slightly more vertically, and to be able then to move the whole arm and not have it fixed with a hand. Like so here, I've got my elbow locked to the table, and that gives me a much more limited scope of movement, and actually becomes very, very uncomfortable and difficult to draw long lines. Something actually I can't do on A3 paper. And if my hand or my palm of my hand is there, or my wrist is on the paper, then of course I'm in an even worse position, and I can only do very, very small shading type exercises. So when we're sketching, ideally arm off the table, long fluid lines. And if I'm honest, this is a really nice warm-up exercise that can be done before doing any kind of sketching, where you just get a piece of paper. It's quite wasteful, I realise, but you just do a series of lines, and as you become more confident with doing things like that, potentially you could even draw something like some 3D boxes, possibly in two-point perspective. And what you'll hopefully see now in the way that I work is I move the paper. So I don't move as a sketcher. I am happy in my position now. I'm comfortable. So why make myself move or contort my body when actually the easiest thing to do is move the paper? So the lines I'm constantly doing are that way, which, you know, could give me a very, very simple 3D box. And if I wanted to then, you know, with practicing these techniques and repeating, you know, I could press a little bit harder in places. I could apply perhaps a thicker line on the outside. I'll do this very, very quickly so you can see. Okay, like this, which defines my shape perhaps a little bit more, like that. And if I wanted to, I could even just add in a little bit of cross-hatching, sort of shading, just to try and give my work a little bit of shadow. And that's just a very quick sort of warm-up exercise that could be done with pencil, but remembering some of those rules.